Jack Goodman. The film wastes no time establishing the werewolf threat with the death that sets everything in motion. American backpackers David Kessler and Jack Goodman are hiking through the Yorkshire moors when they ignore warnings from hostile locals at the Slaughtered Lamb pub. Lost in the fog and darkness, the two friends joke nervously about their situation until they hear something moving in the darkness. That's when the werewolf attacks. Jack gets separated from David in the chaos, and the creature pounces on him with savage ferocity. The werewolf's claws tear into Jack's flesh as he screams in absolute terror and agony. We see the beast mauling him violently, ripping at his throat and face with primal rage. The attack is brief, but brutal. No prolonged chase scene, just sudden, overwhelming violence. David tries to help but gets slashed across the chest and knocked unconscious. When David wakes up in the hospital weeks later, he learns that Jack died from his injuries on the moors. But here's what makes this death so painful. It's not really the end for Jack. The werewolf curse means Jack can't rest in peace. He's trapped in a deteriorating limbo, forced to return as an undead corpse to warn David about what's coming. Jack's death becomes an eternal nightmare rather than a merciful end. The businessman. After David's first transformation, he wakes up naked in the wolf enclosure at London Zoo with no memory of what happened. But the news reports tell the horrifying story. 6 people were killed in bizarre animal attacks across London overnight. The first victim we learn about is a businessman who made the fatal mistake of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This poor man was simply walking through Piccadilly Circus Underground station late at night when the werewolf emerged from the darkness. The attack happens in the echoing tunnels of the tube, where the man's screams bounce off the tile walls. The werewolf corners him with nowhere to run, and the beast tears into him with savage efficiency. We don't see this death directly on screen, but the news coverage and crime scene photos reveal the aftermath. A body so brutally mauled that authorities are baffled about what kind of animal could have done this. What makes this death particularly painful is its randomness. This wasn't someone who wronged David or deserved punishment. He was just an ordinary person commuting home who became collateral damage in David's curse. The businessman represents the innocent lives destroyed by the werewolf's rampage, and his death weighs heavily on David when he realizes what he's done. This stranger's blood is on David's hands forever, even though he had no control over his actions. The couple. The London rampage continues with another senseless killing that shows just how indiscriminate the werewolf's hunger is. A young couple was enjoying a romantic evening in one of London's parks when David's werewolf form discovered them. They were likely kissing on a bench or walking hand in hand when the monster attacked, turning their intimate moment into absolute horror. The werewolf descends on them with terrifying speed and violence. The couple barely has time to register what's happening before the creature is on them, claws and teeth tearing through flesh. One tries to run while the other screams, but the werewolf is too fast, too powerful, too driven by supernatural hunger. Both are killed in rapid succession, their bodies left mangled in the grass as the beast moves on to find more prey. This double murder is especially painful because of what it represents: love and innocence destroyed by unstoppable evil. These two people were probably planning their future together just moments before they died. Maybe they were on a first date, or maybe they'd been together for years. Either way, their story ended in the worst way imaginable, torn apart by a monster that shouldn't exist. When David learns about this killing from the news reports and Jack's undead warnings, he's absolutely devastated. The guilt of murdering two people who were simply enjoying each other's company becomes unbearable. The homeless man. One of the most disturbing deaths in David's werewolf rampage is the killing of a homeless man sleeping rough under a London bridge. This victim was completely defenseless, probably wrapped in newspapers or old blankets, trying to survive another cold night on the streets. He had nothing and nobody, which makes his death even more tragic. The werewolf finds him in the darkness beneath the bridge where shadows hide the city's forgotten people. The homeless man probably woke up to see glowing eyes and bared fangs just before the attack. There was no escape, nowhere to run, just a brutal mauling in the darkness where no one could hear his screams. The creature tears him apart with savage efficiency, adding another victim to the night's body count. What makes this death so painful is the victim's vulnerability. He was already suffering, already abandoned by society, sleeping outside with no protection. Then his life ends in the most horrific way possible, killed by a supernatural predator, while the rest of London sleeps safely in their beds. When the police discover his body the next morning, he's probably just another statistic, another nameless victim. But his death matters because it shows that the werewolf curse doesn't discriminate. It destroys lives regardless of wealth, status, or circumstance. Even the most powerless members of society aren't safe. The inspector and police officers. After multiple brutal killings across London, the police finally corner what they believe is a dangerous animal or deranged killer in Piccadilly Circus. Inspector Villiers leads a team of armed officers into the crowded square, not realizing they're hunting something supernatural. David, still in human form but knowing he's about to transform, tries to warn them while also begging them to kill him. But nobody understands what's happening until it's too late. As the full moon rises, David transforms in the middle of Piccadilly Circus, surrounded by hundreds of civilians and dozens of police. The werewolf emerges and immediately attacks, killing Inspector Villiers first. The creature tears into him with claws and fangs, making an example of the man who led the hunt. The other officers open fire, but bullets don't stop the beast. The werewolf plows through the police line, killing and maiming officers who are completely unprepared for what they're facing. These deaths are particularly painful because these men were just doing their jobs, trying to protect the public from what they thought was a human threat. They had families waiting at home, partners who would never see them again. Inspector Villiers probably had years of experience on the force and thought he'd seen everything, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The massacre of trained police officers shows just how unstoppable and deadly the werewolf truly is. David Kessler. The most painful death in the entire film is David's, because it's the only one that feels like mercy. After his werewolf form kills multiple people in Piccadilly Circus, David is cornered in an alley behind the cinema. Police have him surrounded with weapons drawn, but the person who ends his rampage isn't a cop, it's Alex Price, the nurse who fell in love with him and let him stay at her apartment despite all the warning signs. Alex pushes through the police barricade and walks toward the snarling werewolf trapped in the alley. She tells David she loves him, her voice cutting through the chaos and confusion. For just a moment, the werewolf seems to recognize her, seems to understand. There's a flicker of humanity in those animal eyes, a brief connection between the man and the monster. Then the police open fire. David's body transforms back to human form as he dies, naked and bloody in the dirty alley, surrounded by strangers and flashing lights. Alex cradles his body while police radios crackle and crowds gather. The look on her face says everything. She loved him. She tried to save him, but the curse was too strong. David's death is painful not because of how he dies, but because of what it represents, the total destruction of a good person by forces beyond his control. He didn't choose to become a monster. He didn't want to kill anyone, but the curse made him a killer anyway, and death was his only escape from the nightmare.